Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with a fellow nomad, Billy Lahr. Billy, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely love talking to people who are moving around. Although you and I are doing it in much different fashions, and we'll get into that a little bit um, during the conversation. But before we get started, just introduce yourself. In your own words, who is Billy today?
Oh, who is Billy today? All right. So I'm a certified mindfulness meditation teacher, certified personal trainer, a former educator, and a serial overthinker. So that's how I would describe myself. Currently, I am in Hanoi, Vietnam. And I am here because I spend a lot of time in Seoul, but I'm originally from Minnesota, and just like Minnesota in winter, Seoul gets cold. So I wanted to get out of the cold. I went to Chiang Mai, Thailand for a month, and now I'm here in Hanoi. I'll go back to Chiang Mai and just really enjoy being in those warm weather areas that are affordable. And I also know people too, and that's really been uh, important for me to reconnect with the people that I've met on my journey. And we can kind of get into why that is as we talk a little bit about how our nomadic lifestyles differ.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. So tell me, how do you go from, an educator to a guy that's, again, taking Nomad to a totally different level than what my wife and I are, because we're, pretty much confined to North America for the most part. You're literally going all over the world, but, from an educator to what you're doing, like what brought that transformation on? Because it really is a transformation.
Yeah, yeah. So, I've never been married. I don't have kids. So I don't have the same responsibilities as everybody else. But I did have this urge to want to teach overseas or be overseas at some point in time. And what was really preventing me from doing that was I had a dog and I didn't want to travel with her as she got older. So I just told myself when she crosses the Rainbow Bridge, that's when I'm going to start making plans to take a leave from education and travel around. Well, I did that in September of 2021. And then that leave just turned into a resignation. And I've been able to travel ever since. Now, the first year was just me doing that. But then when I got to Seoul, I felt really connected to the community of people that I met there. So I went back to the States in, was it July of 2022, and sold all my stuff and went back to Seoul for another 3 months. And then I left and went to Thailand for 6 weeks. I went to Singapore for a week. I went to Vietnam for 2 weeks. And I went to Japan for 2 months because Japan was number one on my bucket list of places to visit. Korea was number two. So I got to spend a lot of time in those places, but just still felt connected to Korea and started realizing, okay, at some point I'm going to have to go back to work. What is it that I want to do? Because having worked in education for 21 years, I don't want to do that anymore. But I still have this desire to help people navigate the complexities and possibilities of life. And I used to do that as an English teacher, and then I did that as a dean. And one thing that I have incorporated in my life is a mindfulness practice. I often say that mindfulness not only changed my life, but it most likely saved it as well. And I wanted to give that gift back to other people who maybe struggled in the same way that I have and still do to some extent. But I've been able to navigate those struggles, mental health struggles, through my mindfulness practice. So now I'm a certified mindfulness teacher, and that's the path that I'm looking to go down here, moving into, I guess, the second half of my life.
That's amazing and very very gutsy. I mean, people talk about what my wife and I are doing as being a leap of faith and gutsy and selling all our stuff, jumping in an RV. But um, like I said, we're still in the the same country that we started in. We'll get into Canada here and there. Um, so there's no language barrier for us. You are really taking it to a whole new level. So, you know, do do you speak the languages of these other countries that you're going into?
No, not at all. I
Wow.
actually have taught myself the Korean alphabet just from riding the subway. So they use Hangul, and I've been able to figure out, okay, this Korean letter is this sound or this letter in English. And so I can figure out what the words are. It takes me a long time to do that. I just have no idea what any of them mean. So there are some words though that I'll recognize, particularly on a menu, where I'm like, oh, Pajon, okay, I know what that is. Okay, Jjigae, I know what that is right there. So that kind of stuff I pick up on, but no, I don't speak the language. I don't speak Korean. I don't speak Thai. The Thai alphabet, I don't even know how I would begin to learn that. It's so complicated. Just the way that the letters are formulated, it's really really difficult. And in Vietnamese, you think that because it uses Roman letters, but then they have these different accents. Like they actually use a question mark on, like a small question mark on top of a letter. Like, for example, all this time, you probably have had pho before, right? Well, it's not pronounced pho. Pho is something different. And pardon me to anyone who speaks Vietnamese here as I butcher the pronunciation of pho. It's pho because it's you put that question mark over the O, and it makes it sound like a pho, like you go up at the end. So it's little things that I have learned like that I pick up on here and there. But in terms of like grocery shopping is probably the most stress inducing thing that I do on a weekly basis, because I go in there and I have no idea. I'm like looking at pictures, and or I'm going to the fresh meat section and picking stuff out there because and I don't know how to prepare a lot of those meals either. There's a real art to cooking, especially Thai food and Vietnamese food and Korean food. I'm used to making really simple meals. So yeah, it is a challenge, but and those things are certainly stress inducing, but I find people to connect with, and I feel super fortunate that I think one of my superpowers is, but my therapist told me, Billy, it seems like you can go anywhere in the world and fit in. And I feel like I've been able to do that and make connections. So when I do go out to places, I'm usually with someone who speaks the language, and that helps me experience that a little bit more. I get more out of what's happening around me, and I know that it would be more beneficial if I would learn the language wherever I am. I just haven't I haven't figured out where I want to land yet.
Right.
And I've spent more time trying to figure out Korean because that there's a higher likelihood of me landing there than anywhere else. But there's also a really promising opportunity that potentially awaits for me in Chiang Mai too. So it's just kind of figuring that out. And I'm not a go with the flow kind of person. I worked in education all these years. I like routine, I like structure. Bells told me when to start and stop things. So that's what I'm used or how I'm used to living. So trying to get into a routine has been it's a challenge, but when I'm in my routine, then I feel very much like productive, and I feel whole, I feel complete. But then also creating autonomy and flexibility within that routine as well, to go out and experience what the culture and is around me.
Wow. Yeah, man, talk about getting out of your comfort zone. That's a whole new level of getting out of your comfort zone. Um, compared to what we've done for sure. So, what was it that sparked this, this journey that you're on?
Yeah, like I said, I had the opportunity to go, and so and I had always wanted to travel overseas, particularly to Asia. I wanted to do because when I knew that when I went to Korea, I wanted to spend at least a month there. I didn't want to do a week in Korea. I didn't want to do a week in Japan. So, I'd been a good saver. I've been very responsible with my money. I found someone to rent my condo for a year, so I didn't have to worry about those things for the first year of traveling. So, it really was just a all right, let's give this a shot. And then after doing that for a while, I realized that there just wasn't going to be a way for me to transition back into that position as dean of students. So, like, all right, I'm going to resign and let's just see, let's just push the envelope and see where this journey takes me. I'm able to afford it for now. And I'm coming kind of towards I'm at the 2.5 year mark. September will mark 3 years. So that, at that point, I'm going to have a better financial plan. But like I said, I have an opportunity in Seoul, but I also have an opportunity in Chiang Mai that should be what I call maybe a life raft in terms of at least, a job is a job. I'm not someone who thinks that your passion needs to be your job and your job needs to be your passion. Sometimes a job is a job that pays you money to fuel or to supply you with whatever it is that you need to do in order to find your purpose and find your passion. So these are certainly jobs that I know how to do and I know how to do well, but at the same time will allow me the flexibility to do some of these other things that really fill my bucket, so to speak.
Yeah. Was there how long were you in education before you started this nomad journey?
Yeah, I was for 21 years. So I was an English teacher for 15 and I was a dean of students for 6.
Yeah. So was there something about the educational system that made you want to get out? Like, was there a certain, you know, kind of trigger point that made you say this isn't for me and you wanted to explore other things, or what brought that on? I mean, because that was a career. I mean, you'd spent a career there, at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I don't necessarily think that was the case so much as I I just didn't see a way back after having this experience traveling. And I thought, the for 21 years, you're right, that was a career. But there are a lot of people who, you know, they're shifting careers after 3, 5 years in a position. So I thought, 21 years, that's a that's half my life right there at that point. So let's go see what else is out there. And my dad used to tell me, "I hope you're a good teacher because you'll starve if you have to do anything else." And he's not wrong. He's not necessarily wrong about that. But when I think a teacher, I don't think it necessarily has to be just working in a public high school with students. And so right now, I'm really enjoying my time as a mindfulness meditation teacher and helping people navigate the complexities and possibilities of life through mindfulness. So yes, I left education, but at the same time, I'm still a teacher. I'm
Right.
still an educator. And I feel like I lucked out in my 20s. I figured out what my purpose was because I figured out what I'm good at. And being an educator always gives you room to be curious, and being an educator surrounds you with I feel so fortunate that the educators that I worked with were just top tier educators. So that's really the magic recipe for finding your purpose is understanding what your strengths and your needs are, exploring your curiosities, and finding your crew to help you amplify those curiosities to help continue on exploring those curiosities.
Yeah. I love that. And it proves that, you're never too old to make a shift, because, it was 30 years that I was doing what I was doing as running a youth nonprofit sports organization. Um, and actually loved what I was doing, loved every single minute of what I was doing. But then, it came as though there was this, another calling, so to speak. And I think a lot of times people get stuck in a rut where they think, well, I've been doing this my whole life. It's too late to, to make a change. It's too late to shift. It's too late to start a new career. I mean, my mom started a new career in her mid 40s as well, so when you hear people say that it's too late to change, it's I'm too old to make a change, what is your general response when you hear that?
Well, I get tired of these 30 under 30 lists, right? Give me the 50 over 50 lists.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who doing amazing things at 50, over 50. Like there is this midlife reinvention. I had the wonderful luxury of speaking to Wendy Battles. She hosts a podcast called the Reinvention Rebellion. And she interviews women who are like in their 60s or 70s who are just reinventing themselves. Like she talked to a woman, I think she was 70-ish or something like that, and she was just starting her modeling career at that age. And so to me, it's some people just figure out what they want to do a little bit earlier, and then some people evolve over time, and they're like, I there are a lot of skills that I learned over the last 20 years, and I see myself kind of shifting in a different direction, but still utilizing my strengths. So let me just take a risk. And some people are willing to take that risk. And on the other hand, there are people who they look at they take a look at the risk cost reward of all of it, because there's a you do have to think about, all right, I have my family here and I need to make sure that I take care of that. There has to be a conversation around those things. I was having that conversation with a friend of mine here recently. He's just kind of going through a tough time, and you know kind of going into that doomsday mode of well, anything is possible. Well, he's going to the things that are possible that are going to ruin him. And when I talk to people and work with people who are in that mindset, I try to bring them back to the probable and just say, yeah, sure, anything is possible, but what's probable? Because, yeah, you could go to the doomsday approach, but you're 40 something years old. You've acquired a lot of skills. B, you have a lot of tools in the mental fortitude, the mental wellness toolkit that you can access in order to navigate these challenges. So, you know, I think that if we have a willingness to continue being curious, be open, be compassionate, and be aware, and to be non-judgmental, to be accepting and be grateful, you take all of those and there's so much room for growth. So it doesn't really matter what age people are, as long as, especially the curiosity and the openness. If you have those two things and you have the awareness, if you have those three things, there's no telling what you can accomplish or how you can evolve throughout your life and how many times you will evolve over life.
Right. Right. Yeah, because life in itself is just a constant evolution. It's just that we as humans resist it as much as we can. You know? So, so what was it that got you into the mindfulness practice in the first place?
Yeah, I started practicing mindfulness around 2013, and I learned about it because I was really struggling with my mental health. I was having anxiety attacks, and those anxiety attacks were manifesting into depression, and that depression was manifesting into suicidal ideation. And luckily, my best friend has his PhD in forensic neuropsychology. And I was kind of using him as my makeshift therapist. And he said to me, listen, some of the things that you're telling me, if you're really feeling that way, he's like, I can't be the dude. You have to go and work with a therapist. Like, you need to get professional help. And I'm grateful for him for making that suggestion, because a couple days later I was like, okay, so I luckily there's a psychologist office right around the corner from where I lived at that time. They had all sorts of different psychologists. I sent him their bios and said, you know me, find one in here that you think will work well with me. And he picked a woman named Mindy Dixon. And anytime I do an interview, I always mention Mindy Dixon's name, because Mindy took me out of a really, really dark place and helped me move forward so that I could manage those feelings of anxiety in a way that was so much healthier. And we did that through mindfulness. And like I had mentioned before, mindfulness not only changed my life, but it most likely saved it too. I remember the following school year, I was working with my sophomores who I had as freshmen, and one of them said, Mr. Lahr, you seem like you're in a better mood this year. And that's really what kind of sealed the deal, in that this whole mindfulness thing must be having an impact, because it was palpable. My students were feeling a different version. They were seeing a different version of me, and I was giving off a different vibe that they were picking up too. So for me, one of the tenets of mindfulness is gratitude. And so for me to return the gift of mindfulness to others through teaching and sharing my experience is is a gift, is a way of extending gratitude to both Mindy and the practice in and of itself. And one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me is, Billy, when you're excited about something, you want everyone else to be excited about it too. And I love talking about mindfulness, and I love talking about the power that it has to help us navigate the complexities and possibilities of life.
And I guess as a former educator, it was just kind of natural for you to, migrate into helping others on their own, you know, mindfulness journey. So, how did that kind of evolve for you from, going through the practice for yourself to deciding, okay, this is real. This is something that has helped me, immensely. Now I want to share it with others and, make them understand how it can change their lives.
Yeah, when I look back on that, I think I tried to run before I could crawl, in that, because I was so, I had this amazing, profound experience, that I wanted to share it with other people, and I wanted to share the principles of it with other people, and the science with other people, without really having a true grasp of what that all meant and how it really was impacting me. I knew it was impacting me, but I didn't fully understand how it was impacting me.
Right.
So I think as I first started out teaching it, maybe a year after I had finished up with therapy, I was just more about, hey, this mindfulness thing is great. Hey, let's meditate, and everything will be better. And that wasn't necessarily the case. And so I had to take classes, and I had to really continue to cultivate my own practice and spend more time in contemplation about what is it about this mindfulness practice that is helping you navigate the stress and the anxiety. And what I realized was, number one, I was understanding the somatic experience of what an anxiety attack felt like. So when I start feeling anxiety, it starts in my stomach, and if I let it get out of control, then it just makes its way into my chest, into my head. I can feel my shoulders hike up, my hands will crinkle up. So when I start to experience that, I'm like, oh, wait, this is what an anxiety attack feels like. And once I have that awareness, then I can kind of self talk and say, all right, now that you know that this is happening, let's just kind of keep it where it's at rather than try to shove it down because it's only going to push back harder. Let's just keep it where it's at and operate from a mindset of, hey, you have something bubbling up right here. Now that you're aware of that, let's respond to situations around you, knowing that you have something going on. So you might need to take a second or two to take a pause to respond so that you don't react emotionally or impulsively. So I had to understand that. And in doing that, I was able to kind of name and tame whatever emotions came up and sit with those and welcome them in rather than block them out. I would welcome them in. I mean, you probably watched Cheers, and anytime Norm walked into the bar, they all yelled Norm, and then they'd have a beer waiting for him. So that's kind of what I see all emotions, not just positive emotions, but all emotions, even challenging emotions, is that when they present themselves, I say, oh, despair, you're here again. Have a seat. Here's a beer. What brings you here, despair? And then we have a conversation. We say, all right, I hope you enjoyed that beer. Now I'm going to let you go and see what emotion comes right now or comes next. And in doing that, it allows me to kind of just sit with awareness about what is coming up and then tending to those emotions so that when they bubble up at another time, it might be a very inopportune time, but I at least know how to manage them. I know how to identify them. I know how to feel them and what they feel like.
I love that. So, on your website, you call yourself the emotional hostage negotiator. Tell me a little bit about where that came about.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with the very lovely, incredibly intelligent Dr. Yvette Erasmus, and we were just kind of throwing around some ideas about what would be something that's catchy or clever, or trying to collaborate with people, and we kind of came up with this idea of if you're feeling emotionally hijacked, right? And so I think about, in what way have I been emotionally hijacked? Well, burnout, for sure. Burnout is something that left me emotionally hijacked. Um, Rejection oftentimes would emotionally hijack me. And as a digital nomad, isolation is something that will emotionally hijack me. Self-limiting beliefs, those will emotionally hijack me. I think those are all things, those are all emotions that emotionally hijack us from time to time. And when we're hijacked, we feel like we're taken hostage. So as someone who has navigated the underworld, I guess, if you want to continue with the kind of that shady imagery right there, navigated the underworld of challenging emotions, I know how to get in and get out of those situations. So I think of myself as an emotional hostage negotiator, because a negotiator has a conversation negotiator talks through it and helps the hijacker reason or come to reason and rationale. So I feel like if I'm able to have a conversation with somebody and they're able to share with me what emotions are hijacking them, we can bring in those emotions and sit down with them and negotiate why they're there, how long they're there, what purpose they're serving, so that in a way we can use them to our advantage. I'll give you an example. I have a friend he's also a fellow digital nomad. His name is Dr. David DeMarcus. He was a guest on my podcast, episode 51. If people want to check it out, he's a wild dude. He's kind of an out there dude, but he's pretty prolific on his Instagram, and he's kind of a grind and hustle kind of guy. I'm anti grind, anti hustle. I'm kind of the opposite of that, and he and I have talked about that before, and he often references his haters. And so I messaged him today and I'm like, dude, do you still have haters out there? Do you still have people who doubt you? Because he has had people in his past question his digital nomad lifestyle, and I mean he's crushing it as a digital nomad. But how are you ever going to live a sustainable life? You're traveling all around and this, that, and other, da 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 da. He had a lot of people question him in that way, and so he turned that anger into something useful. So to me, he could have allowed himself to be held hostage by his anger and let that and use that to lash out at them. But he doesn't. He uses that as motivation to inspire himself to continue living his dream life, which he is doing and is quite successful at doing so. So I applaud Dr. DeMarcus. Like I said, we just had this conversation the other day because I was like, do you really have these haters out there? And he's like, kind of, sort of, but I do sort of use the old stuff in order to fuel me when I'm feeling like maybe a little lethargic.
Right.
I'm like, I love it. I love it, dude. Go for it.
Yeah. So, you just mentioned that you also host a podcast. What got you into podcasting?
Yeah, so the podcast is called The Mindful Midlife Crisis, which I feel is an apt title for where I am in my life. And I wanted to create a podcast where I had an opportunity to talk to people that I revere, that I find interesting, who have had incredible life experiences, but also have a wealth of knowledge and expertise to share. People who I just think are amazing. And I wanted to give them a platform to share that expertise and their life experiences in a way that maybe they hadn't had before. And I always thought that I was going to write the great American novel, The Mindful Midlife Crisis. As an English teacher, you think that you're going to write the next great book. And it just never happened. And I was talking to my friend Kristen Brown, and I told her, I've got this idea for a book called The Mindful Midlife Crisis. And she just stopped and looked at me. She said, you have a year to do something with that title, because if you don't, I am stealing it, because that is a great title. And Kristen is in like a nationally renowned speaker. So it was kind of like, oh, she's serious. She's going to steal this in a year and do something amazing with it if I don't turn it into something. So I wasn't really feeling the book idea, but I was starting to get into podcasts around that time. And I love emceeing events. I love working a microphone. So I didn't want to do it by myself. So I asked my friend Brian, who has all this high-end recording equipment and is also a super great dude. I was like, do you want to do a podcast where we kind of talk about like mental health and navigating life's challenges, but just kind of coming from a male perspective, and maybe we target men so they are more open to talk about this sort of stuff. And he's like, yeah, dude, I have a degree in psychology and mass communications. Let's do it. So I'm like, perfect. You're the right guy. And so I did it for 3 years. I wrapped it up at the end of December of 2023, but I have over 120 episodes out there. Not all of them are good, but a lot of them are good. And so, we have a fan faves page on the website that people can check out. But I tell you, just I really enjoyed having those conversations. I did, and there were times when I was just like, I felt like a teenage girl outside of TRL Studios on Backstreet Boy Day talking to some of the people, because I was just so excited to have those conversations and to get to ask the questions that I really wanted to ask them and dig deep and have them share their wealth of knowledge, not just with my listeners, but with me too, so that I could apply it to my own life. And I take what I had a guest on named Brian Pyatt, who has a podcast called Take What Serves, Leave the Rest. And I just think that's such a great name, because I think that's what we should do with podcasts. I think that's what we should do with information, is just take what serves us and leave the rest. Not everything I've said here today is groundbreaking. Nothing is
Right.
new, but it's just my own experience. But maybe something in here resonated with somebody who's listening to it. And I hope so. And if it did, please let's connect. I love connecting with people.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important piece of information because I know, I have a background in sales as well. And I know, many times during my sales career, I'm going to, all these different sales seminars, and everybody's got the blueprint on how to be a successful salesperson. But I never took it as that. I would, you know, I, I might have gone to 10 different seminars and I would take, a nugget from this one and a nugget from that one and a nugget from that one to develop my own, model from all these other components. And I think that that's so important because so many times, people say this is the blueprint and it's really not that. That might have been the blueprint for them, successful for
Mm-hmm.
them, but it's not going to be, we're all individuals. But if you can take a little bit, from here and there and kind of mold it into your own, that's an incredible nugget of advice that people can, if nothing else out of this conversation, if they take that, that's huge because it's
Yeah.
it's so important.
People our age maybe remember the cartoon Voltron. Do you remember Voltron? Did you watch
Little
Voltron
bit,
back in the
didn't
day?
watch it a whole lot. No.
Okay, okay. Well, anyway, Voltron, it was five mechanical lions that joined together to form this giant beast. I can't remember what the name of what it was called, whether it was called Voltron or what have you, but I think of us like that. Like, you're taking whatever it is from around you to kind of create this superhero that is you. So what is it that applies to you? Because I know that for a long time I tried to act like other people. I tried to be somebody else, and I wasn't myself. And I feel like I'm now coming more and more into who I am and getting, I've always been comfortable in my own skin, but I feel finally a bit more authentic and a bit more genuinely me, and feel very comfortable living out loud in a way that isn't pretentious, or that isn't someone else's behavior or someone else's mannerisms.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to copy that or imitate that. Now I'm just me.
I love that. I love that. Well, it's been a great conversation. We're going to start to wrap things up. But before we do, is there anything that we miss that you think would be valuable to the audience?
You know, I know you're going to ask me the kind of minute to win it thing sort of question that you're going to ask. So I think that's a that just kind of here's what I'll say. I think people. I was talking to a lady who said, Billy, don't you think mindfulness and meditation have a PR problem? And I do. I think they do have a PR problem because too often we get told to be mindful by people who have no idea what it means to be mindful. Mindfulness is the awareness of whatever is present and doing that without judgment. That's what it means. Awareness of the present moment without judgment. I think that's really important to understand because if we can bring ourselves back to the present moment, then we're not constantly time traveling to the past or to the future. We're actually enjoying what is here. And maybe we're not even enjoying it. Maybe we're in this moment. We're like, this is what I'm feeling right now. And it's okay to be present with that so that you are experiencing life as it is happening rather than constantly planning or fretting. And these are things that I'm always working on. And when we talk about mindfulness, that's an umbrella, and meditation is under that umbrella. But there are things that we can do under the mindfulness umbrella, like drinking your morning coffee by activating all five senses, letting the taste be the last sense that you activate, and just taking, it doesn't have to be the whole cup, but 5 sips like that, where each sip, maybe it takes a minute. You just activate all 5 senses every single time you take a sip. We can do that with food. And all of these are mindfulness practices that we can do that are not meditation. So a lot of times those two things get linked together and they are related. But there are things that we can do that are mindful, that allow us to be present and aware and practicing that non-judgment, to just simply let things be, going from doing mode to being mode. So the more that we can find those moments, I think the more comfortable and content and settled we'll feel, and more satisfied that we will feel.
Love that. Love that. So, not to get too much off track, but do you feel that living the nomad lifestyle has helped you to live in the moment more so than before? Because I know it has for us, for sure.
I think it's provided me with more opportunities to be reflective. It really is easy to get caught up in the chaos of the hamster wheel during a busy work day, a busy work week, a busy work month, a busy work life, family, all those things, they pull at us. So how do we then find those micro moments where we can just be present for 2 or 3 minutes and just sit with our breath? And I feel like being a nomad has allowed me to find more moments like that. But then I've also been intentional around it because I've tried to hold on to a rule that if I'm going to take a picture of something, I'm going to also look at it for a minute with my own eyes and not just snap a picture and go to the next thing and snap a picture. Do I fall into that habit still? Yes, of course I do. But I'm reminded of my interaction with the Mona Lisa way back in 2018. People, they pushed their way up to the barrier so they could take a picture of the Mona Lisa, and then they turned around. I made my way up and I took my picture, but I stayed at that post there, and we just had a moment together. It's weird to say that you had a moment with a painting, but I had a moment with the Mona Lisa where we were just present with each other. And I looked at that smile and just looked into her eyes and appreciated what was going on there. And then turned around, and what a lot of people forget is in that room where the Mona Lisa is, there's this incredible tapestry on the back wall where the Mona Lisa is. That is so much more interesting and impressive than the Mona Lisa.
Hmm.
And they neglect it. They forget about it because they just are there for the Mona Lisa. But if you stop and look around every now and then, and I feel like that's what traveling has allowed me to do, is stop to look around at so many different cultures and foods and experiences, but then also constantly remind me of what it is I am grateful for in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, Billy, how do people find you if they want to reach out, find out more about what you do? Where do they find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I just launched a brand new website. You mentioned it before. It's www.billylahr.com, Lahr. If people want to listen to the podcast, they can go to www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com. There's a lot of episodes there. So if you click on podcast, you can take a look at fan faves. Those are all the good episodes. Like I said, they're not all good, but those are the good episodes according to our fans. So take a listen to those. I'm on Instagram. I love connecting with people on Instagram. It's mindful_midlife_crisis. I'm also pretty regular on LinkedIn as well. So you can find me on Billy Lahr. That's where you can find me on LinkedIn. Shoot me an email sometime too if you feel like that. It's billy@mindfulmidlifecrisis.com. I do a meditate and mingle session each week. It's Mondays at 8 p.m. Central Time. If people are interested in learning more about how to cultivate a mindfulness practice, this is for beginners. This is for seasoned practitioners. I'd love to see you there. You can go to either website. There is a link to click for the meditate and mingle sessions if you're interested in learning more about how mindfulness can help impact your life.
Love it. So, Billy, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that Billy does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I'll come back to the mindfulness piece. I always feel like I do that, but one thing that I do too, another thing that I try to do is I don't just use social media to creep on other people's pages. I use it to stay connected. And the longest running research study on happiness conducted by Harvard tells us that the happiest people in the world are happy because of their community, of their connections that they've made throughout their life. And I feel so blessed for the connections in the community that I've made, and it's really important to me to stay connected with people. I had a guest on the show named Jennifer Walton, and she talks about people in her fives, and they are people that she makes an effort to connect with at least 5 times a year. And 5 times isn't a lot, but it's enough to remind people that you're thinking about them, that you're checking in on them. And I think that that's really, really important. And that's not something that I do every day, because maybe I do it 5 times a year with one person, but it's something that I try to do with a bunch of different people so that I can stay connected with them. And if you're listening to this and we haven't connected in a while, I'll make sure that I reach out to you. But if you don't hear from me, please reach out to me too, because I would love to hear from you.
Love that. I love that. Billy, really appreciate you taking the time. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of one of my books. And again, Billy, appreciate the time. This is a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
You bet.